Hey guys, it's John the Quant here. A lot of the companies that I've been talking to lately have mentioned that what they really want is somebody who can automate their reporting. And I mean, that's a pretty big trend. People don't want to have to do all the tedious work of creating Excel reports over and over and over, at least quarterly for most, fintech outfits. Um, and it turns out this actually isn't that hard to do in Python. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look into creating an Excel report, Microsoft Excel report in Python. And a follow-up to this is going to be taking what we do today, turning it into functions to automate it further. And eventually we are going to make a graphical user interface so that somebody who doesn't know how to work Python can use what we're making and generate their own automated reports. So let's head over to the computer and let's get started. All right, we are over on the computer. First off, we are going to use this quarterly report from Charles Schwab as kind of a template or an inspiration. Okay, so you can see we got a title, we got some context here, logo in the top right, another title, a couple of highlights, paragraph, a table down here. And I really like these tables with the alternating colors. I think those are very easy to read. I like that this stuff over here is way over on the left. The big difference that we're going to do between ours and this one is we are going to insert graphs. First, ours is going to be very much shorter. We're only going to automate a single page report. And our page is going to have, of course, a title, logo, contact information, title, highlights, paragraph, a table, and then we're also going to make a chart. And let's go over to Colab and look into how we're going to do that. First, this information mostly is because I used Kaggle and I downloaded the Kaggle dataset straight into Colab. I also needed the most recent version of OpenPyXL or OpenPixel. I'm going to say OpenPixel because it's easier. I downloaded from Kaggle the U.S. Consumer Finance Complaints dataset from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Unzipped it, still all in Colab. Here's a URL. The libraries that I really used were Pandas, all right, OpenPixel, and String. Now, OpenPixel is very cool. It lets us do all kinds of stuff, create Excel documents, and edit Excel documents all through Python. So I first loaded the CSV consumer complaints information using Pandas. You can see there were 556,000 rows in this. And I wasn't really sure what to do at first, so I thought I'd better clean everything up, have a look at it, and decide what I want to report on. So I just cleaned up the data types, changing everything that needed to be a date into dates. Then I'm just kind of looking at the data and seeing what's in it here, doing the same at the tail. I computed this column, time till sent, that measures the time between the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau received the complaint versus the time that they sent the complaint to the company. And then I just kind of kept the columns that I thought I might be interested in. Looking in a bit more, I saw that subproduct and sub-issue had a lot of missing information. Then I thought I'd better just see which columns are missing a lot of observations. So of course, subproduct, sub-issue, and then this one here, consumer consent provided, was missing a lot. I thought I still might want to talk about those columns, so I filled in the missing values. In subproduct, I just filled it with subproduct missing, sub-issue missing, consent missing, or when the state was missing, I called it unknown. Then I'm just looking at the value counts, and you can see almost all of them were missing the consumer consent. So I decided not to use that, and I decided to just look at the worst companies. And by worst companies, I mean those that received the most consumer complaints. Here are the top 10. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Capital One's on there. And then I'm just keeping the data, keeping the observations from these companies. And it turns out those top 10 worst companies are about 53% of all complaints between 2011 and 2016. And the average time till sent, I thought I might be interested in that, was about 4 days and 15 hours, but it turned out to not be very important. I didn't use it. So to generate the table for our Excel report, we're going to use a pivot table. It's very easy to make a pivot table using pandas. We've already got this data frame that we made that contains the observations for the worst company. I know I wanted to just get the count of how many complaints they had, and I used this one. I used the product column to count. Index was company because I was interested in companies, and then columns was the received year. So we're doing the count down here. You can see the count of how many complaints did this company get in this year. So Bank of America got about 16,079 in 2012. And that's our table. That's the table that we're going to insert into the report. And then I needed to create a total column down on the bottom. Wanted to make a total. And here I just saved it using Pandas' super easy to Excel statement. And I started it on row 23. And I knew that I wanted the page, the Excel report, to go from row A through row M, which is M is the 13th column. So I knew I wanted to go from there. And I actually worked up a template that maybe I should show you guys. A template. Did I save that? I didn't save it. I'm very sorry about that. You know what? I am going to find a template photo, and I will edit that into the video so you guys can see the template that I'm working off of. So I ended up setting the start row. All right, that's where it starts putting the data into the Excel spreadsheet to be the 23rd row, and the start column to be so that the data, so that this 2016 column ends up in column M. And that was important for OpenPyXL because however the column that this 2016 column ended up in was the furthest I could go over into Excel using OpenPyXL. So I needed that to be M, which is why I set this up this way. Then I looked at the percent increase between 2015 and 2012, but I didn't end up talking about that very much. All right, then using OpenPyXL, I loaded that workbook that I had just created using this pandas command. All right, and then I took the sheet name, which was report, from that. And I'm talking specifically about that sheet here. And this is, I'm going to use report sheet most often, but when we save it, we will use report workbook. All right, then I got the column and row where that table, this table, started and ended in Excel. And then I created an alphabet string, or just a list of all of the characters of the alphabet to make it easier to run loops through Excel. And then I'm just making, this is the range that the table ended up being in. And ended up going from G24 through M35. All right, so at this point we have a table and a chart. We've got the total column, the total row on the bottom there. And here we're just assigning the specific values. The title of the report, which goes in cell A1, it's going to be CFPB complaint report. It's super easy to affect a specific cell using OpenPyXL. You'll get the worksheet that you're working in, and then you're just summoning up that cell. So our cell A1, you just, in square brackets A1, set the value that you want to put into the cell, and then you can change the font of the cell using this OpenPyXL.styles.font, capital F. You can set the font, the size, and whether or not you want it bold. Very easy. I set the contacts one to be an A3, set the font there, size 16. Then the media contact, I set in A5, the word media, set the font, and then if the media wants to contact me, they can contact John the Quant. I'm not giving you my real phone number. And then if investors or analysts want to contact me, they can contact John the Quant. And this is my email address that is associated with this YouTube account. So then I was doing the title of the report, which corresponds to this part right here. So far we've made this, the big title and the contact information. Now this next part refers to this these three. All right, I'm calling this title and then highlight 1 and highlight 2. So the title of the report is Consumer Financial Protection Bureau Complaint Report 2011-2016. Goes in A9. Set the font and style for that. It's bold, it's size 12. And then we're going to merge cells. And what I did was I just merged the cells all the way across because I wanted it to be centered here and it was the only thing on that line. So I merged the cells all the way across and then centered it. And I did the same thing for the 2 highlights. My highlights were that 53% of all consumer complaints are attributed to 10 companies. Then merge the cells here and center them. And then my second highlight was that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau fielded over 550,000 complaints with an average of 4 days between receipt and contact with the accused company. And merge those cells and center it here. Now this call, you can see that after you merge the cells, that A11 or B11, C11, whatever, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So after you merge them, it's better to call up that cell using this syntax where you've got the worksheet dot cell and you tell it which row. We're in row 11 and which column, and here you could pick any column 1 through 13 and that would have been fine. Then dot alignment to set the alignment, opxl.styles dot alignment, and horizontally we want it centered, and vertically we're putting it at the top of the cell. Vertical one doesn't really matter right now because the cells are all the same size, but if you change the size of cells, it will matter. All right, so then we're going to format the table to make it look like a Schwab table. So here, what we need to do is cycle through the columns, all right, from where the table starts to where the table ends. Now, OpenPyXL is indexed starting at 1, and Python is indexed starting at 0, so you've got to add this 1 on the end, otherwise it's not going to go far enough. And then for row in, so we've got the columns from where the table starts to where it ends, and then the rows from where the table starts to where it ends. And so we're summoning up the worksheet and then going into that cell, row equals row and column equals column, changing the font. Everything's going to end up being Calibri, size 12, and not bold. Then the same thing, we're summoning up the same cell again, and we're saying this actually clears out the borders. It says don't put any borders at all. If you don't clear out the borders, then it automatically sets borders based on a pivot table, and I didn't like those. So I deleted all the borders so that we could start over. This one right here. So at first, when I put this table into Excel, it just said company with the lowercase c. I didn't care for that. I just capitalized it. That's all this line does, is it's capitalizing that C. And then I underlined the top row. So here for the column from where the table starts to where it ends, we're getting the table start row. Okay. Going into the worksheet, get the cell where the table starts. The cell in the row where the table starts, and then cycling through the columns. And then we're setting the border for each cell on that row. All right, so opxl.styles.border, and then the bottom, you have to use opxl.styles.side. All right, and then you can set the border style. There's a lot of options here. Double, dashed, thick, thin. I just said medium. Medium's good. And then, so that created a line across the top here. And I also wanted a line here across the top of the total row. So that's what we've got set up. So overline the bottom row for the column in the range that from where the table starts to where it ends. Then we're going into the worksheet and selecting the cell in table end row and then cycling through the columns. And we're setting this border equal to opxl.styles.border. And we're saying that the top is going to end up being the medium style border. And then in this one right here, we're cycling through all the rows, but we're cycling by 2s because here we're making the stripes, these blue and white stripes that I liked. So we're counting by twos. So in every other row, we're cycling through the columns and we're picking out from the worksheet, we're picking out each cell in that row and that column, and we're setting the fill equal to pattern fill, where the fill type is solid, and then this is the hex code for like a nice blue color that I liked. All right, then I'm making the paragraph message that corresponds to this right here. Right now I just said Denver, Colorado, put in this long message. I just typed it all into Python, but we're going to think of an easier way to do that soon. And then I shoved it into A13. And then I selected all the cells from A13 through M22, give it a big square, and then merged them all together. And then I changed the alignment for that merged cell. And I changed it where horizontally it's left aligned and vertically it's top aligned, and then we're going to wrap text. Next, I'm summoning an image because we've got a logo up here. So I've grabbed my LinkedIn photo, uploaded it. I changed the width and height to make it look pretty square and to fit nicely in the corner. And then I added it and I anchored it here to cell J1, which where it really just kind of looked like that's where it ought to go. So now next I moved the row index, which is the first column. Okay, the row index, first column here. And I took that row index and I moved it all the way over, because if you remember, whenever I put the table into Excel, I started from the end. So this is what it ends up looking like. So I started from here and I put the table in this. But then I didn't want my company to be here and have my table end up all the way on the right. So I just moved the cells here that had company, Bank of America, Capital One, and so on in this column, and I moved them over into the first column so that I could then merge the cells to make it look good. And the way you do that in OpenPyXL is you have to get the range, and I wanted this to be flexible. I didn't want to just type in the range. It would have been much easier, but I wanted it to be flexible so that you could do this using a function or a user interface. So I've got the row index range, which just contains, it was G24 through G35. And you go into the worksheet and then you move range. You select that range, tell it how many rows you want to move it, and if that's positive, then it moves it to the right. If it's negative, positive in rows, it moves it down, and negative in rows moves it up. Columns, positive moves it to the right, and negative moves it to the left. So I wanted to move it the negative of wherever it started to get it to 0, and then add 1 just to move it to the first column, the A column here. Then we have to cycle through the rows. So we'll go through row 24, 25, all the way down to 35. And then we need to select all the columns from 1 to where the table started. So that's what this is doing. For row and range table start row to table end row plus 1. That goes from 24 through 35. And then I'm merging the cells where the start column is 1 and the end column is where the table used to start, okay, which is column G. And the start row and end row are the same because I just want to merge that. I want everything I'm merging to be on the same row. And then I changed the alignment. I aligned it left, and vertically I aligned it to the bottom so that it ended up looking like this. Left aligned on the bottom and all merged and nice. Plenty of space in there. Next, I wanted to create a bar chart. OpenPyXL make that super easy. opxl.chart.bar chart. You can actually make any of the Excel charts, line chart, stacked bar, whatever you want. It's actually very easy. So you create an instance of that object, which is the bar chart here, and the next we're putting the reference data into it. So the data that actually goes into the chart is going to be this information, the data itself from the table, excluding the total column, and also the column names. So the reference, you tell it what worksheet to look on, and you tell it what column to start on. Okay, column 1. Then you tell it the rows to look at. And I misspoke a second ago. The data itself, ends up containing the companies, but not the years. The years go into the categories. So for the data, we're collecting the names of the companies and then all of the information there. So that translates to telling it what worksheet, and then the minimum column is 1, all right, because we're going all the way to the edge here. And then we're starting where the table starts and going 1 less than the end of the table, because the end of the table contains the total row, and I didn't want to include that in the chart. Then we need to get the categories, which use the same thing, opxl.chart.reference. Tell it what worksheet you want to look at, tell it what column to start with, and where to start the row, and then and further on there. So this one, I went from the minimum column is 1 to where it started. So this just contains these columns here. Then we add the data to the bar chart. Okay, bar.add_data, and you're adding the data reference that we created here. All right, and you want it to get the titles from data, that just so that you don't have to set your own X labels. And then set the categories, because we want it to be different color for each year. And then you can set the chart size. And this just took some kind of guess and check stuff to make it look nice. And then you get your worksheet and you add the chart. Okay, name the chart. And then you anchor it where you want it to be. I wanted it to be anchored in the second column, that's the B column. But then row-wise, I wanted it to be two blank spaces after the end of the table. So that's table end row plus 2, turn it into a string so that you can put it all together and anchor. You can set the title. You can set the style. It's just the number. Excel has different, chart styles. And then you need to save the workbook. For some reason, I actually saved it twice. Right before I recorded this bar chart actually used to be higher up in the sequence of events, but it needed to be at the end because of the moving around of the table. And then this last cell right here just moves the Excel spreadsheet that we've made from Colab into my Google Drive. And this is what it ends up looking like so far in Google Drive. You can see it's got the title, the contacts, the picture there, title, a couple of highlights, this paragraph of information, then the table, which looks great, and the chart that we made at the bottom. So from here, this is actually in Google Sheets. I also have Excel, which I downloaded it too, and it looks the same in Excel. But from either of those, you can easily print it. And it comes out looking like this. Doesn't that look great? It's got the title, all the information, picture, everything you could want. Now there is a slight difference. This is the one that I printed from Google Sheets, print to PDF. And this one, this is the one that I printed from Excel. You can see slight differences, different colors. This chart looks a little smaller and has rounded edges, but it looks great. So let's go back to where we can see each other, and we'll talk about what we're going to do next. So that was a lot, and we went through it really fast, but hopefully you can see that it's not really that hard. This did take me a couple of days to just kind of figure everything out, because I've never worked in OpenPy Excel before. But our results look great. So the very next thing we're going to do, and I'm going to link to the next video right after this, is we're going to take what we've done here and turn it into functions so that you don't have to go through and type everything, and always tell it where the logo goes. You can just call the function, tell it what picture to put, and it will automatically put it there. All right, so I'll see you guys in the next video, and have a great day.